Let's talk about one of my favorite things in the world of technology. Monitors. Or displays, whatever you prefer to call them. I kind of go back and forth. They're both the same thing. Hello guys, how are you? David Franco here from davidfranco.com. Brand new design, by the way. Check it out if you're curious. I appreciate it. So today's video, as I've already made clear, is all about monitors. And plus, you can probably tell from that title, right? The title's actually down there, David. It's not 1999 anymore. But seriously, I love monitors. I love displays. I love seeing what I'm working on. I mean, come on, that is kind of important. If you want to see what you're working on, you need a monitor. If you want to see what game you're playing, you need a monitor. And if you want to see whatever else you do on your computer, you need a monitor. But a good monitor at that. And there is a significant difference from using a crappy monitor and a really good monitor. Which brings me to the point of today's video. My 31-inch LG 4K monitor. And the model number is the LG... I don't know what the model number is. I can never memorize that. Okay, so I can memorize pretty much every model number of all the cameras that I've owned throughout the years. But when it comes to this thing, I don't know. It's like 31MU something or 31UM. Just check it out right below on Amazon if you're curious. And I got it for like $1,000, which seems like a lot of money, but you gotta understand. If you want good technology, you're gonna have to work for it and you're gonna have to, well, pay for it. Although even with that said, I could have gotten that for free technically because I know people at LG, of which I'm very grateful for, but I needed a decent business expense for the 2016 tax year. So anyway, let's talk about that monitor and what it's like to transition from 3 monitors to 1. And let me start out by saying this. The transition is significant. It completely changes the way I use my Mac Pro. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. Let's talk. So first of all, the most obvious one, multitasking on a single display is not nearly as easy as it is on a triple monitor setup. Completely different experiences. However, with that said, using spaces in OS X, in other words, multiple virtual desktops, makes the process a little easier for me, the user. And I think that's a big deal because OS X has had spaces for years. Windows just recently got spaces. Okay, not just recently, and by spaces I mean desktops. But still, it's kind of amusing how long it took for Microsoft to catch up in that regard. I don't know. But hey, you know what? It goes both ways. Apple copies Microsoft, Microsoft copies Apple. Bada bing, bada boom, that's how the technology industry advances, I guess you could say. But anyway, going back to the point, using spaces in OS X is pretty much a godsend. Not only that, but I also use apps in full screen a lot more often than I ever used to, especially with Final Cut Pro 10. There's just something really nice about working in full screen on a 31-inch 4K display. It's beautiful. And also, it's worth noting that there's far less clutter when working on a single display when compared to 3. You don't have windows all over the place when using OS X's spaces. All right, moving on to bullet point number 2. I am much more focused nowadays than I previously was. And that's saying a lot because I am very easily distracted, especially with social media. So with my triple monitor setup, my setup was typically like this. The middle display was my primary display. Obviously, that's common sense. That's where everything went down, Photoshop, video editing, all that stuff. Then on the second display to my left was primarily my secondary browser, which is Chrome, and my social media use, like Twitter and whatever else I was doing at the time. And then way over here on the right was my third ASUS display, which by the way, I used the ASUS PB278Q. Now that I have memorized. The LG one, I do not. But anyway, the third display was primarily used for watching podcasts and if I needed the extra space for Photoshop and all that stuff. Oh, and of course by podcasts, I just mean videos in general, like YouTube and stuff like that, and even Twitch here and there. So I definitely do miss that. I miss the ability to see multiple displays at one time, especially when it comes to media playback. But like I said before, and getting back on track, I am so much more focused nowadays than I previously was for one main reason. Social media is hidden. Okay, so you're probably saying, but David, why not just close Twitter? Well, because I really liked having Twitter open on the left. It just felt awesome. But now that the displays are consolidated down to one display, I actually do feel a lot more focused. You see that? That's all I need. besides this, my 12.9-inch iPad Pro over there. Which brings me to my next point. Let's talk about physical space, my actual setup. My desk is so much cleaner and actually far less cluttered than it was before. Look at this, I have all this space to work with, and because of all this space, I have plenty of room for things like my iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro. And that's a big deal because my 12.9-inch iPad Pro now serves as my secondary display. I'm quoting because it's not technically hooked up to my Mac Pro as a secondary display, but I use that pretty much every day for podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that. So the ability to play videos and whatever on a display that's not hooked up to my Mac Pro is awesome because it declutters my primary display, my LG. So I think that's a big deal and definitely a nice way of using Apple's largest tablet yet. And also, let's talk about cable management. I've never been the best person when it comes to cable management, but I will say my cable management is the best it's ever been because when you switch from 3 displays to 1, you have to imagine, doesn't cable clutter come down big time? Yes, it does, big time. I don't have cables floating behind my desk. I mean, I still do down there, it looks kind of ugly, but believe me, that's a lot better looking than it previously was. So now to my last bullet point. My setup is now future-proof. If I ever want to replace my LG monitor with something bigger and better, then I can without disrupting my workflow. Whereas before, when I have 3 matching ASUS PB27AQ Quad HD displays, if I want to replace one of them and the other 2 don't match, that kind of drives me crazy. I'm looking at the screen because that shadow on my neck kind of bothers me. I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, but seriously, using monitors that match is a big deal for me. And guys, honestly, that's no longer a problem when I'm using one large display. And even with that said, if I want to upgrade to something even bigger, such as a 34-inch monitor or a 40-inch monitor, yes, 40-inch, I've actually thought about it, then I can, because look at this, I still have plenty of room. And by the way, I can actually show off my Mac Pro now, which is just beautiful in itself, because previously, that poor thing was hiding behind my 3 monitors, which is not cool. But now, it's out in the open, showing off its shiny, sexy self. So guys, there you have it. Those are my bullet points in terms of why I believe switching from 3 displays to 1 does not necessarily make you less productive, but it makes you more focused in the long run. Because let me tell you, having one monitor in front of me, it may not look as cool as having 3 displays surrounding me, but I'm much more focused nowadays than I previously was. And well, I think that's significant. That completely changes the game, and I just think that's awesome. Because after all, the more focused you are, the more work you can get done. Oh, and by the way, my monitors are not going to waste. I have 2 over here for my gaming setup for Twitch and YouTube gaming, and my 3rd one in my bedroom gets used every night for my 3rd generation Apple TV, and I love it. So anyway, there you go. My thoughts on this matter. What do you guys think? Could you ever switch from a multi-display setup to just one? Let me tell you, it's not as bad as you might think it is. Thank you guys so much for watching. Your support means a lot. And if you have not done so yet, please check out my Ask David podcast over at askdavidpodcast.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is not the podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon. Peace.